to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Hey everybody, it's Tom Dutta here, the Quiet Warrior. That's Tom Dutta like butter. We're here on this incredible boat. Now, this is the floating studio. It's never done something like this before. We have a remarkable guest today. But let me tell you about the Quiet Warrior Show. We're the next generation of podcasting. We are going to release this episode on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, and now Rumble, and also a video premiere across YouTube. So we're really excited about that. I want to thank you for the support of the show. We are now booked out every week right through to September. We've just passed 300 episodes. These are long-form 1-hour episodes. And because of you, I want to say thanks for that. I'm honored to introduce Rick Hansen, known worldwide as the Man in Motion. After a car accident at age 15 left him paralyzed from the waist down, Rick refused to be defined by his disability. He became a Paralympic athlete, and then on March 21st, 1985, Rick embarked on the Man in Motion World Tour, wheeling 40,000 kilometers through 34 countries across 4 continents. Wow. This wasn't just about fundraising, everyone. It was a global movement to create awareness of potential of people with disabilities, to break down the countless barriers that they face. The tour was more than a feat of endurance. It was a spark that ignited worldwide change for accessibility and inclusion. Rick proved that people with disabilities have the ability and they belong everywhere. While that marathon ended May 22nd, 1987, the momentum it created continues today in efforts to create a world where potential knows no barriers. Since then, the Rick Hansen Foundation has been transforming how we think about accessibility and inclusion. Rick is also passionate about conservation. That's why we're here on his boat, particularly of sturgeon in the Fraser River, which is why we're here. And you can see the backdrop, how beautiful it is today. I want to welcome you to the show, Rick Hansen.
Thanks, Tom. Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome to be here too. Let's talk about the significance of this boat. Now, it's here in Richmond, British Columbia. What's significant about this spot and this boat for you?
Well, first of all, Steveston is basically the salmon capital of Canada. You know, it was actually a big part of the British Columbia economy. In the 1800s and 1900s, it became this organic gold rush where people from all around the world came here to be able to help harvest salmon. And this is a place where there's a massive harbor. It's transformed from purely commercial to now mixed use. And therefore, we start to shift our values and beliefs from simply an industrial kind of, those are the hardy who are participating, not worrying about accessibility, and now to an open, globally facing little community that is actually available and accessible for everyone. And so that meant we had to pick a host that was ready to help break down some more barriers and bridge the gap between accessibility in the outdoors and accessibility in the indoors, and then also bridge the gap between conservation and nature and people with disabilities who have a chance to be part of that movement as well. But you have to get there first.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. You know, I had a chance to get here a few minutes earlier than you did, and this boat is quite something. And we're going to do some special video of some of the little things on this, but I heard that you've got special custom work here. Just tell us a few things about that.
Yeah, well, if you start to think about a host marina, you know, you have to start thinking about the parking lot, of course, the pier, accessible washrooms. You have to think about the ramp coming down, the dock itself. Yeah. And then there's barriers on the dock, like typically the cleats here where there's a tie-up area, but that's an obstacle. So we had to get that all engineered to make it more seamless, but we also had to build the boat so that the floor of the boat would be level with the modern standard height of the dock off the water. Yeah. And so as you can see, this floor is level with that dock. So literally we also have then build a boat that has an opening door on the side of the gunnel, and so that door opens up. You just put your ramp down and wheel straight across. And I can tell you from personal experience, over 50 years, having to battle to get, in a boat or into the outdoors, it brought tears to my eyes to be able to literally just simply wheel across and right into this boat, and it was absolutely spectacular. It's amazing. And then of course you start thinking about the boat itself and its function. Yeah. 3 sections. The back section, it's a working section for fishing, ecotourism, research.
And these will be your little fishing.
Yeah, so these are adapted so you can wheel underneath and get close to it. And if you're actually doing conservation research, you can bring fish up and into the boat so they can be supported in water, but also, you can measure and tag and release and be part of that whole program of conservation. Or you can be a host narrative guide if you're an Indigenous leader and take people on a cultural tour and bridge past to present to future. So this working section is so critical. And then the internal communication and comfort section, which is inside the cabin, where you can actually have a chance to view in inclement weather or when you're cruising, but you can have visibility with the windows. You have open floor seating. It's based on the principles of universal and inclusive design, which we see in the indoors now, that now is being delivered in a boat. So you can adapt it based on who you bring here, whether someone has a hearing challenge, visual, various mobility, whether you're standing, whether you're in a chair. And so now this boat is fully inclusive. And if you want to be the captain, you can actually wheel straight onto a lift that's been engineered and lift yourself up and drive the boat, or co-captain. And even shock absorbers in the platform, so if you hit waves, you can actually have absorption of energy, just like someone would when they bend their knees and they hit a shock.
Wow.
And then the privacy section in the front, a washroom and curtains to come down, a lift that would come up and take advantage of small space. So this whole boat was considered to be an inclusive model of what could happen everywhere. And then thanks to an amazing donor, the Peterson family, Ryan and Monica Peterson, in memory of Ryan's brother, Kevin, they donated $2 million to help build this boat, but also to create a program to get thousands of people out on this boat to experience this so they could go out into the world and actually create that movement in the outdoor space. And I'm so proud and excited about the team that's put this together and can't wait to share it with as many people as possible.
Well, that's why we're here. And I want to introduce you to somebody who's behind the scenes. His name is Mitch. Mitch, just give us a wave or say hello. Mitch is the videographer today, but I also want to acknowledge his service. So we're going to talk a lot about service today, but Mitch spent 15 years in the Canadian Forces, and he was a helicopter pilot.
Fantastic.
And about 5 years ago, he created Mitch Productions, Mitch Nurse Productions. And so he's got some great things that he's going to do. So we're going to take some special footage of the boat.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And going to record on camera a commitment that you're going to take us out one day on the boat. Because
absolutely,
I got to be on this boat for the future, for sure.
Well, then we could also actually show you the adapted technology, because then if you're going to use the boat and actually fish, if you have a high, challenge with your hand mobility, we have sip and puff technology to an electric reel. So a quadriplegic who's respirator dependent could actually be part of that.
That's amazing. I want to just bring on camera here. I brought some props, and this is Mr. Brain. He goes everywhere I go.
Awesome.
And so you might have seen this, the audience, when I do the shows. But in 2018, I fell on my head in a bathtub, had a brain injury. It took about 5 years just to get back to walking and talking. But one thing I do appreciate, and I wanted just to comment on something you said about accessible for everyone, is sometimes we don't realize, unless it's visible, that people have disability. Exactly. We're going to be meeting Mike Harcourt again very soon, and he's got a story himself. But when I came on the board there, just the way you have this customized, when I walk now, my peripheral vision is here, and I have difficulty seeing outside of that. So Rick, what I do is I get a little nervous, like I'm going to step into the water.
Right.
So this is like just beautiful, just coming right on. So great,
well, I'm glad to
job.
hear that. Thank you. And I also totally agree with you. You know, we look at the symbol of accessibility as globally as a stick man in a wheelchair, or now maybe a more dynamic person in a wheelchair, but still, that doesn't represent the full complexity of the 1.3 billion people on the planet and aging boomers with many challenges. And I think we have to reframe our view of what accessibility and inclusion means, and start designing things, you know, that humans create, you know, for those that are visible and not so visible.
You're a great rapport builder, and I thought, what am I going to do as an icebreaker story for Rick? You know, it's just an honor to be here on your boat. And so last night, my wife and I were having dinner, and, you know, it's a beautiful sunny day here. I live in Port Moody, British Columbia, and she said, I want some ice cream. So we live in a village, Rick. It's like a little bit like Whistler, BC, where you can walk out. So I go to the store, and I get my ice cream, and as I'm walking to that self-serve checkout, I literally stopped my backtrack, and there's the magazine rack, and I said, really? The day before I'm going on the water, you have this magazine up? So we're on the water here, but the reason I'm showing that is because I do have a story, and it connects to, I think, something remarkable about you, Rick, which is doing it in fear. So my other part of this story is I had anxiety or stress just thinking about being on the water a little bit today. So about 10 years ago, my wife and I went to the Bahamas. It was a reward trip for a networking company, one of these product sales companies. We became diamond distributors, and we left the industry after achieving that. So they took us out, and they had two boats like this, and they were about 100 meters apart in the middle of the Bahamas. And they put a rope between the back of each boat, and they had the rope hang out of the water. There's about 50 of us, and they gave us snorkels. And they said, okay, what you're going to do now is you're going to each shimmy down the rope into the water, and they hang off the rope. And then what we want you to do is we want you to look with your goggles down in the water. They didn't tell us, but underneath one of the boats hanging by a big metal chain was a bait box. So we look in the water, and there's sharks feeding down below.
Oh my God.
And, you know, I learned to swim by being pushed out of a boat, and, you know, my dad was in the military, so a little bit of that, but it's like, when I saw that magazine, I thought, okay, that's going to help a lot for the interview. So we're going to leave that on your boat today for casual reading for your folks.
That's so awesome. Well, what an appropriate story, though, eh? Is
you do it in fear.
Yeah, as we all have fear.
Yeah.
And it's a powerful force. It can be debilitating. It can also be a force of transformation.
So, Rick, are you ready to go into Plato's Garden and have some fun?
Why not? What the heck?
Welcome to Plato's Garden, Rick. Now, I want to set this up because those who are listening to us on a podcast won't see this, but we'll have on the screen some information about Plato's Garden. So Plato was an Athenian philosopher who founded the academy, from the Greek word academia. It was the first higher learning institution in the Western world. He believed in examining life through dialogue, or what we call critical thinking, which a friend of mine, Mike Harcourt, told me critical thinking is the way, you know, to sit and have thoughts about your thoughts. So by exploring different angles of our conversation today, what we're hoping is the audience is going to be able to mesh it all together and then find hidden meaning behind the story of Rick Hansen. So we're going to go into three areas, Rick. One is what I call macro. So that's what are the things in the world that influence you, the global world. The second one is mezzo. So mezzo is the sector. So the sector that you are in, right? And then my favorite is micro, which is the man, Rick. This is because we have to go deep and really learn who you are, right?
Good luck.
Good luck. That's how we do this. I always say some of the guests I've interviewed, and we've done a lot of interviews, they're hard to crack open. But you are ready right off the bat. You're wide open. You're wide open because you shared your vulnerability about what happened and what you've done with your life. So let me set the stage. Rick, there's something deeply symbolic, Rick, about sitting here with you on the water. The gentle rocking beneath us, and I know we have stabilizers in the boat, but I can feel it. The horizon stretching before us. It kind of mirrors what we do in Plato's Garden, where we navigate that deeper currents in someone's life. Now, you're my first guest who navigates the world on wheels, and we're calling this Wheels on Water. It's kind of catchy, right? And that makes this moment even more significant. Water has been woven through your story, from what I know, from fishing trips as a young boy to the fateful journey home from fishing when everything in your life changed, to now your conservation work and this very boat designed to ensure that the water is accessible to everyone. In a hospital room in 1973, when you were just 15 years old and learned your life would take a radically different course than you imagined, that's where we begin. So let's get into the micro. The turning point that moment, Rick, in the hospital when you were told about your paralysis. So what went through your mind? And was there something specific someone said to you back then that either hurt or helped shape how you responded?
You know, when I was laying in the hospital bed and the doctor came in, family was around me, and he told me I'd broken my back and had damaged my spinal cord and I would never walk again. I just could not fathom the enormity of what that meant to me. It was like this huge black dark veil had been kind of cast over top of me, and I had no point of reference for it. I just couldn't imagine my life continuing without the use of my legs. Everything was defined by it. My sense of independence, power, success, adventure, camaraderie, family, everything defined by that. And now someone was telling me that it was all gone. And I just was devastated. Part of me went into denial, you know, and of course, having had injuries before, I thought, well, maybe that's for somebody else, but not me.
Yeah.
And then the other part of me went, oh my God, what is this going to be? And I was in this really, really deep, dark place.
Yeah. Now, how did that, it was a car accident or something had happened?
Yeah, I was in the back of a pickup truck. You know, I'd gone on a grand adventure. I'd organized this for over a year with two of my buddies on my basketball team in high school, and we graduated from grade 10. We went on this journey from Williams Lake to Bella Coola, which was hundreds of miles straight west, you know, to the west coast of British Columbia, and we were going to be salmon fishing, and we did. We caught fish, and then one day we were going, you know, it was in the evening, it was raining, and we were going to get some extra bait, and there was a guy broken down on the side of the road with his girlfriend in a 57 Chev pickup truck loaded with gear. A bit of a hippie guy, and he had two flat tires, and so we stopped and helped him. There was nobody else there. We took him, got his tire, repaired, and came back, helped him change it, and he was super grateful, and off we went. And then basically 3 or 4 days later, there we were, halfway home, and Don and myself, we were basically on the side of this little general store in a place called Clean, halfway from Bella Coola to Williams Lake, and we wanted to hitchhike. It was sunrise, and cars had gone by, they hadn't stopped, and then this other guy is coming along, and up I get, hands out, thumbs up, and he's driving right by, and then he sees me and my friend Don, and he slams on the brakes, and it's the guy that we helped change the tire, and he goes, "Hey, come on, get in." You know, we helped him, he's helping us, and sure. In the back of the pickup truck we got, and then my friend Don didn't like the side that he was on, so he asked to switch. I said, sure, why not? Of course, you know, that's what you do with friends, and my fate was sealed. So when he went around the corner 3 hours later on a rough gravel washboard turn, he lost control and he rolled the truck, and Don was thrown clear, and I was trapped inside, and that's how my accident happened. Changed my life. It was, at the time, the worst thing that could have ever happened to me.
Well, I got to say thanks for sharing that. I mean, you talk about vulnerability. So I know you've told this story over and over again, and so we appreciate you telling it again. But each time you tell it, it's raw, right? It's like you relive it. Let me talk about returning to the water. Your dad and brother took you fishing after the injury. Coming back to the water, it could have been a place of painful memory for you, but what was that like, getting back to the things you loved, and did nature play a role in your healing?
Think about the time, 1973, attitudes for Canadians and most people in the developed world. If you had a disability, you were in trouble. You should probably be pitied because there wasn't much opportunity. And I certainly didn't know anyone that really had any major disability. And so I inherited that internal stigma, the stereotype, the limitations that were defined by the time. And I was only 16 now. I'd had my 16th birthday in the hospital. So I was coming back home, and I had this view defined by being strong and independent. Now I was totally dependent.
Yeah.
And I would sit there and be able to drive my truck with hand controls, but I would watch people go down the trail because I wouldn't accept help. And they would do all the things I wanted to do. They'd be with the people I wanted to be with. Yeah. And the pain, it wasn't coming from my legs. Yeah. It was coming from here. And the attitude that I'd inherited And it had to hurt enough for me to ask the question, where's it coming from?
Sure.
And then I really finally realized, if I wanted to be Rick,
Yeah.
I was still there. I just had to break that barrier and accept help. And when you started to think about that, then get on the back of my little brother, imagine that barrier.
Yeah.
And he piggybacked me down, or my dad would piggyback me down, help me get into a boat or down to the side of a river. And there we were, fishing again, having a great time and just living life. And it was like getting back in motion, but in a different way. And it started the process of being mindful of the things you inherit and those beliefs, and are they serving you, or are they their biggest handicap?
Yeah, I go back to the day that I fell in the bathtub. And the difference with your story and mine is at that time I didn't know the extent of the injury. And so over 5 years when your life unfolds, but within 2-3 months I slipped into personally depression. And what I learned very quickly was the thing you have to master is that mind. And I think that's a teaching moment here on the show, everyone, with Rick, that it's the physical injuries one, but the battle of the mind and the incredible things that he's done, that's the big part of this story.
And it's interesting for all of us. We can have a trauma or a disease or whatever it is, and have that relentless view of recovering fully,
Yeah.
and on the journey. But then there's the reality of what we're dealing with every day as time ticks away, and we only have time.
Exactly.
That's our most precious commodity. And if we don't balance that by still seeing the passion and the possibilities, the love and the beauty of that moment, in spite of the pain and the suffering and the barriers, then we become fixated and captive by the dark side, and we can't get out.
Yeah, the dark side, for sure. So let's talk about the Terry Fox connection. Around the city, there's these big statues of Terry Fox. Terry Fox, for the audience, in 1977, diagnosed with bone cancer from above his knee, lost his leg, and at age 15, and then started something remarkable. So you connected with Terry through wheelchair basketball, I think. What was it like finding each other, two young guys dealing with this new reality? And did you guys ever talk about the bigger purpose you both ended up finding?
It's interesting when you come back in the rehab process and you think that sport's been taken away from you, and somebody like my phys ed teacher, Bob Redford, says that nowhere in the definition does it say you have to use your legs in order to be an athlete. Yeah. And therefore Paralympic sport was there. Yeah. And then a guy like Stan Strong, the manager of the Vancouver Cable Cars wheelchair basketball team, he was in a wheelchair since 1940, and he wasn't supposed to survive. He comes and recruits me, and I get introduced to this dream team, this incredible team of Peter Calistro, an all-world all-star who's one of the best players on the planet. Eugene Reimer, Canada's outstanding male athlete of the year, with Karen Magnuson in 72, and so many others. And all of a sudden I go, oh my God, I'm thinking it's all recreational, not sport. And all of a sudden I'm going, oh, I better get on the curve here to even make the team. And then Stan, being the way he was, it was a culture, of actually paying it forward, not just the taking. So we all modeled after Stan and his incredible thankless giving. And he asked me, he said, make sure you go out and try to bring more people into the sport. And I had dinner one night with some friends, and they told me about this young man who just lost his leg to cancer, and he went to, Simon Fraser. He was on the JV basketball team, and I should give him a call. And I went, sure. I called him up the next day, Terry Fox.
Yep.
And he just said, absolutely, I'm in, let's go. And so he came into our lives, hopped in on one leg, still on chemotherapy, and we automatically had this incredible synergy because of our values. We came from middle-class Canada. We were athletes. We had challenges. We loved sport. We loved basketball. And we wheeled together, trained together, played together, roomed together. It was fantastic to be able to be his friend over the years and watch him grow and become not only the great athlete, but be inspired by that culture in the cable cars, and then look for inspiration and think about what can I do to pay it forward on a bigger scale through his own experience and his talent. And then he decided one day when we were coming back from a game in Seattle, and it was a dark, rainy day in my little green Honda, and I was driving along, and the conversation stopped for a little bit. You know, it was a bit uncomfortable, and I could tell he was ruminating on something, and a voice crackled, and he goes, "Hey, Rick, I want to ask you something." I go, "Yeah," and he goes, "Well, I'm thinking about running across the country on one leg, you know, to help cancer research. What do you think?" And I went, "Wow,
Yeah.
that
was right.
that
Holy smoke.
is awesome."
Yeah.
And I had no doubt that he was going to do it, and he was going to complete it, no doubt.
I mean, what an amazing story. So I had, sometimes I'll have a guest for the U.S. on the show, Rick, and I'll say, have you heard of any local Canadian heroes? And so I talk about Rick Hansen, or I'll talk about Terry Fox. And when we tell those stories, it's surreal. And sometimes you got to pinch yourself. You know, I actually did that. So thank you for sharing that story. So Rick, I'd mentioned to you someone who understands the part of your journey from a different angle. And it's Mike Harcourt. For our audience, Mike did an interview on the show within a year ago. Mike is former Premier of British Columbia, 3-time Mayor of Vancouver. And I never forget that day sitting down with Mike in the studio. He was just like a rock star. He's just incredible.
He is. He's incredible.
Thanks, Mike.
Love you, buddy.
Now, as we get into Mike's story, he took an unexpected turn with a fall that changed everything in his life. So the threads are starting to connect here. And so both your paths have crossed in ways helping shape a more accessible world. But I want to say one more thing about what I call the quiet revelation. So I'm doing my doctoral degree. I'm almost at the end of that. It's been intense. But one of the things that we know is it's the space in between two people. When you're telling your stories, it's what happens in that space in between when the knowledge combines, and then you take that knowledge, you embody it, and then you put it out in the world to create something greater. And that's why I thought it'd be a great idea to have Mike Harcourt here. So Mike, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show again.
Thanks, Tom. Good to be back with you.
All right. Now let's get into the story, the connection point. Mike, you told me once about meeting Rick years ago. And I remember you said something about how Rick had approached a team or a situation that you were in. And at the end of that, you reached into your pocket. What did you see in Rick's vision that day that others maybe didn't?
Well, there was this young kid came to city council when I was mayor, and he wanted to he talk with me, and he said, "I'd like to get a little publicity and talk about a journey I'm going to take around the world." And I thought, whoa, that's a big effort. But sure, why don't you come and take 5 minutes and talk to city council, and we'll do it. I'll have the media there. So Rick came and he spoke about taking this journey around the world, and people were sort of like, "What? You want a wheelchair around the world?" And the media picked up on it. And you got, I think,
It was
really good.
it was an awesome event.
Good little bit. And then I sort of got really enthused, and I said to council, does somebody want to put a motion forward to, give Rick a grant, which required 2/3 of council. I couldn't get the council members to do that, so I just gave a personal check and said, "Go for it, and I hope you make it." Guess what? He did.
Well, that was in the early days, that was one of the hardest challenges. People often ask, what was the hardest part of the whole tour? It was actually getting the program to the point where there was enough support to take that first stroke out of Oak Ridge, that first day. But it was events like that, little converging moments where you could actually bring champions in, and your donation on top of the PR and the awareness was another piece of the momentum. And I'll never forget that, Mike. And I'm so grateful that you were there, man.
I just sort of went, I hope you make it, pal.
I was saying that too.
That's a hell of a long way to go. And he did. It was just quite remarkable. I was amazing. By the time, he was the last part of the tour, I mean, it was rock star stuff. I mean, it was, all over the world, and people following it, and massive number of people in China. I mean, those crowds were incredible, eh?
Incredible. But we didn't do much to kind of quell the doubts and the skepticism on that first day when we went out of the mall at Oak Ridge, and the guys in the motorhome, they literally drove the box on the top of the motorhome straight into the tunnel, smashed all my spare wheelchair equipment right on national television, right in front of everybody. Mike's going, I hope he makes it.
Oh, that's too funny. Well, speaking of warriors, so just before we started on the boat here, I was telling you, Rick, that we set it up for Mike to come, and there's a bit of a ramp here. It's a bit steep, and we're saying, well, we'll meet Mike at the top there, and we'll kind of make sure that he's okay. And well, we look up, and Mike's halfway down the ramp, and I remember phoning Mike and saying, do you have a wheelchair or something else you need to bring? He says, nope. And that day we interviewed you on the show, you talked about Plan B, the book you wrote, and about mindset. And it's like, let's not sit and whine. We got to go to Plan B. Life, you can't give it up. So let's get into what I call the parallel experience. So you both experienced life-changing spinal injuries. Rick in your youth and Mike later in life. How has the timing difference shaped your perspectives on disability and accessibility? Let's start with you, Rick.
Yeah, when I was injured, it would take me, I was on the side of the road for hours. I went to the small rural hospital in Williams Lake, and I was there for an entire day, and then there was no airlifts. I was taken by ambulance for another day to get to a non-specialized spinal cord area. It was an orthopedic hospital in Royal Columbian, and it took 3 days to get operated on. And if there was any hope at the time of my injury, it was all gone by the time I was operated on. And so that was and if you were a scientist or a researcher and they said to you, like, that there's any chance that a cure would be possible or there would be cures, they would be going, you'd be crazy. It'd be a career limiting move just to say it.
Yeah. Now, the perspective, Mike, he's a young boy, and the frontal lobe in the brain isn't as active yet. So, his mindset is, well, let's just do this. But this, with you, it happened later in life. So tell us about that, the impact later in life of having that injury and what happened.
Yeah, no, I was 59. I'd retired from politics after 24 years of being on city council and provincial politics. And I was active doing a whole bunch of work with First Nations on treaties and act development and a bunch of other activities. And Becky and I, my wife and I, were at our summer place on Pender Island, right on the water. And it was November 30th, 2002, we were just packing up the place for the winter and getting ready to go to Hawaii the next day. And I went outside after a cup of tea at noon to top up the hot tub for a little a hot tub between the two of us to go in before we got on the ferry and went back to Vancouver and over to Hawaii. So I was carrying a couple of buckets on the deck in front of our place, which is just a platform just off the ground, and it was slippery, and I had slippers on my feet, and I slipped on the deck because it was slick from the rain and the buckets. And I went back, and then I came forward, and the mass of the buckets, the water, catapulted me off the deck, hydroplaned over 10 foot of grass, boom, over a 20-foot rock cliff to the rocks below, and face down in a puddle of water, the tide coming in, and any event, my wife wondered where the heck I was, Why wasn't I out in the garden helping get it? And she came around and saw me and had the wit to run along the cliff to where it went to the beach and come up to me, run up, turn me over, prop me up, call 911, get rescued by all the crews that were just by chance having a training session at the fire hall. So they had the fire department, the ambulance people, all together. They ran down and he got me rescued. And I went from there to the little clinic and over to on a helicopter on a field right across from the clinic. I landed, took me to the roof of VGH. And by chance, I just happened to have, as Rick knows, is Marcel Dvorak, who's one of the top 3 spinal cord surgeons in the world, not just in Vancouver. And he was able to operate on me and 6-hour operation and put titanium plates in my neck. And I woke up the next morning and I couldn't move anything. And I went, whoa. just like Rick, the shock that this has happened. And I just kind of realized that life was going to change.
Yeah.
And get with it. And ironically, just when I'm going through that experience, who comes willing into my room but my pal Rick?
What goes around comes around, Mike. We're here for each other, eh?
Yeah, we are, and it was great to see him.
That's
He
amazing.
says, "How you doing?" I said,
You remember
"Don't
that
know."
moment,
Oh,
right?
I remember it very clearly. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I heard the news, and it hits you here when someone you know and admire has an accident, and you want them to know that they're not alone. And also, what was really awesome is we'd been working for a couple of decades on spinal cord research and treatment, and he was fortunately medevac quickly, operated on with new imaging technology and guys like Marcel Dvorak, and so Mike, you defied the odds, and you started to have some level of recovery.
Yeah, I did. I basically recovered about 80%. I'm still about 20% paralyzed, but I went to JF Strong, and they're just a rehab hospital, one of the best in the world, and they're tough. They're hard ass.
Yeah, you had a tough nurse there, I think.
Yeah, well, I asked for the roughest, toughest physio you got, because I want to get out of here. Because the people there told me that you're going to come out at GM Strong, you're going to come out in 6 months in a wheelchair. You never walk again. I said, no. Here's the script. I'm coming out within 3 months because I got a golf tournament to play in 6 months. So what do we need to do from today to then to get me walking? And so I got Mara, who was she worked me twice a day, and I learned to move my toes and then my legs and then my fingers, and then I learned how to build up the support to be able to have the support to stand, and then walking poles, and then I was able to walk. But it was a lot of work, tough work.
Well, good for you. I mean, two remarkable stories. Let's talk about working together on accessibility initiatives. What do you both see as the most urgent priority to create a more inclusive world? Let's start with you, Mike.
Well, in terms of people with disabilities, Rick and I have been collaborating for quite a while on a really exciting plan to create a measuring of how accessible BC is, or the city of Vancouver is, and how accessible in terms of housing, how accessible in terms of services, how accessible in terms of socializing and not being alone. And so I'm back up to helping Rick realize that dream. So Rick, why don't you let people know what we're trying to do?
Well, when we were fortunate enough to host the Olympic and Paralympic Games in 2010, think about this. Canada wins the bid for these winter games here in Vancouver and in Whistler, and we send our successor to Mike, our big city mayor, Sam Sullivan, who happened to be a quadriplegic. And he goes to Torino to receive the Olympic flag in Torino, and he modifies his power chair with a bracket. He spins around and flies the flag like any big city mayor would, makes us all proud. But what does that say to the world about how far we're coming? That we're a society where people with disabilities can be included and contribute. And I just think that was such a powerful moment. But now we're hosting two games, the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games, and they're either two events inside one games or two separate games. I mean, I think our country wanted two events inside one games. And so what we wanted to do is then use that games as a legacy leverage to help communities measure up and create a framework. And Mike championed a Measure Up program that started people to actually quantify what accessibility meant and gave people a scorecard, and it had a powerful impact, Mike, all over the province.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, and so that impact got us thinking about more of a movement-based solution to build off that, where you could actually measure from 0 to 100 an accessible and inclusive built environment, and try to then train and accredit people from the design and the construction and the regulatory and the ownership and the advocacy level, so everybody spoke the same language and measured the same things, so that all buildings would be built not to a minimum code based on, a compliance hurdle, but a meaningful level of accessibility, and it's an ongoing process. And if we can kind of free people up, you turn the tap off on all the barriers being built in, which tax Canadians and people around the world, and you create a global movement that transcends boundaries, which is really what I tried to do on the Man in Motion tour, but I didn't realize how big the world was and how inaccessible and disconnected it was. But now we've created a solution, thanks to that initiation during the Olympic and Paralympic Games that Mike moved forward on, to create a movement that will be long-lasting and fundamentally transform accessibility and inclusion to make it normal in the future.
And we were thinking what we wanted to do is make it like a city could be a gold medal, a silver, a bronze, or a no-show, depending on how accessible they were to people, and what were the various areas that were really inaccessible. And we put them into categories. Housing. And we said, well, how about public buildings? And we put it all into a measurement that then Rick has taken it, just flown with it. And
it's amazing.
It's really exciting.
Now there's thousands of buildings across the country that are rated, and they're moving to gold standards. There's organizations, governments that are moving to policy that it has to be beyond code, and that they don't accept any bids without a policy on procurement, that they have to have qualified people building to that standard before they even start, which is where change can really happen in the design phase. So this is a huge, we just came back from New York, to celebrate the LaGuardia Terminal B airport, is completely accessible to a gold standard.
I saw that video.
And it's
pretty remarkable.
It's around the world, and it's just a phenomenal process, and I'm just so honored that, Mike, you were with us at the beginning of that, and it helped leverage and catalyze this, and there's still a long way to go, but, we're going to change the view that when you actually look at the horizon and you see cranes on buildings, I see not prosperity and growth, I see barriers being built in because of the system not normalized yet, and a tax on Canadians, a burden that's not sustainable if we keep building in barriers. So it's kind of creates a sense of urgency to pick it up, go faster.
And we're still working on it. I'm part of an advisory committee to Rick's efforts to do all this, and we're going to succeed. We're going to make this world accessible, available, and friendly to people with disabilities. And the 1.3 billion people in the world that are feeling lonely, are feeling depressed, are feeling down, we're going to work on that, make sure that they feel well motivated, good to be alive, and good to be accessible.
Well, Mike, that's remarkable. The mission continues. The mindset, you're such a positive guy. I'm so inspired by you to drop in today. We had to have you here to be with Rick, Wheels on the Water. So we're going to give you the last word before you leave us today. Anything you want to say to Rick and the audience that you haven't said so far?
Oh, you know what? Rick is such a remarkable human being, and I know what he's trying to do, and he's going to get there. And if I can help, I'm going to do it.
Well, Mike, it's an honor. You're a dear friend. I'm proud of you. And I love the way you've focused and faced your challenge, and you've shown ability, and you've constantly gone forward and been a beacon to so many millions of people around the world who know your story. And they say, if Mike can do it, so can I. But you've gone further than that, because you've paid it forward, and you've helped join a movement, not only with us, but you've also led in so many other sectors, because you're demonstrating that, disability is a state of mind, and that state isn't in your mind because it's only ability. And I think you're an amazing champion.
Thank you very much,
Love you,
Rick.
buddy.
It's not about disability, about ability.
Exactly.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mike, for coming down today.
You're welcome, Tom.
All right.
Thanks for being here, Mike.
Back in Plato's Garden, want to get into the Mezzo, which is the sector sort of around you, Rick. So I'm going to call this a Man in Motion legacy. So during those 40,000 kilometers, and man, I remember that day and looking at your upper body and the muscles you had. It was 40,000 kilometers around the world. What moment stood out for you as the most meaningful that maybe never made the headlines? And what keeps you going through tough days today that you can link back to that?
Well, when I was going through Europe, all hell was breaking loose. We were exhausted, struggling like crazy, going through 16 countries in 6 months, language, logistics, getting the word out. We were coming through Poland, and it got into a small community, and the word somehow got out, and the community just showed up, and it was this massive group celebrating our journey. And through the crowd comes this gentleman, who has had a spinal cord injury, and he's sitting on a piece of plywood with 4 skateboard wheels and a pillow. Wow. And he's pushing himself along the pavement with his gloves and hands, and he's coming up to me, streaming tears of joy, saying, "Thank you. Thank you, because thanks to you and this journey, it's the first time that my family and community are looking at me with pride and ability."
That's incredible.
Keep going. When you get something like that, the moment like that, inside all the stuff that's just going wrong, and you're out of gas, and you're looking for hope and inspiration and meaning, and why should you continue? That one moment, it's so powerful, and it just propelled me through and made me realize, that's worth it.
That's amazing. You tell these stories like they just happened yesterday. I mean,
well, they feel like
it's amazing.
Yeah, it's embedded. Yeah, visceral.
All right, let's talk about the foundation. So this incredible boat that you've got here, the foundation shifted, from my understanding, from fundraising to creating accessibility standards, Rick, and certification. And you touched on that. What sparked that change, and when did you realize awareness alone wasn't enough?
Yeah, you can believe anything's possible, but not everything. And the key often is focus. And our foundation has always had that same mindset that I've had, which is, we look at big barriers, and you try to tackle the barriers with solutions that other people can actually kind of adopt and execute, so it creates a movement. And the built environment, was just a running set of skirmishes, because people were so hypnotized into building to a minimum standard at best, with compliance, kind of like hurdles that, that were just like not sustainable. And so many people were complaining and upset instead of celebrating a new building, human rights lawsuits, like conflict, costly time and human capacity, massive resource, retrofits. And we went, well, where's the problem coming from? And it's because people really aren't taught how to build a building for, meaningful accessibility and inclusion. And so we had to build a standard, and then a training curriculum, accredit people who took that course, so people would know they knew how to do it, and then move people in a rating scale from 0 to 100, so you can keep moving forever on serving people and listening to where their needs are. And then rating and certifying, because people should know what a building, is, and whether it's at a minimum or a gold standard, and celebrate the successes at gold.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, by the way. You told the story about LaGuardia there. You told the story about LaGuardia, and what an incredible thing to have the certification program. I think we'll ask you at the end about where people can find more information, right? Let's talk about sturgeon. I don't know, I saw a picture of one of these fish. It looked like a prehistoric reptile. A friend of mine showed it to me, and I couldn't believe it. And so I learned in researching that you're passionate, right, about sturgeon conservation. So these ancient creatures have survived for millions of years through adaptation. Is there a connection there to your own journey, and what drew you to these specific creatures?
I actually came across sturgeon as a youngster growing up in Abbotsford before we moved to Williams Lake, and I was going down a creek trying to find a pool on an adventure, and another pool led me to the river. And in the Fraser River, I was out there watching, and this big sturgeon jumped in front of me, and I was just mesmerized. Went back to my dad. He said, "That's the Fraser River white sturgeon." And so I kept running into these fish. And even when my like first daughter was born, I'm sitting looking through the maternity window, admiring my daughter, and there's a guy standing beside me admiring his firstborn son, and we're starting to talk to each other and can't wait to sort of share our dreams and our values and our experiences with our children. And he says, do you like to fish? And I go, I love to fish. He says, have you ever heard about sturgeon? I go, I keep running into these fish. And he says, well, I'd like to invite you out. And he invites me out, and I meet a person who's made their living off of harvesting sturgeon, who realized that had to stop. Yep. And now he was actually releasing and creating awareness. And I thought, my gosh, I need to do something. Yeah. And this year that there was a massive die-off of broodstock, it became clear that everyone was arguing about the status. And I thought, now we need to form a society and bring people together to measure the status of the population, build trust, and then know what to do, because we now have knowledge. And so that was the beginning of my full circle, from seeing them as a kid to then being pulled in to know that you can't just take, you have to give, and then forming a society that would be a legacy. And the parallels in terms of the advocacy, using personal experience, the human journey, putting your energy against the things that you know you do well, which is bringing people together to find solutions, and then building bridges between sectors, because who would think, what has fish got to do with accessibility? Everything. Because if people with disabilities can get access to the outdoors and connect to nature, they become healthier, more connected, and they have the ability to be champions. And who doesn't believe in a healthy planet where an inclusive society can be sustained and generated by healthy people?
Absolutely. You just sent me on a journey. I mean, we were talking about where I live around the water, but this thing about mental health and being by nature, being on the water, that connection. And I naturally, when I heard about the boat and what you're doing in conservation, it just made sense to me because of what you just told us.
Well, this program is really the bridge between our view of preoccupation with indoors, move to outdoors, people with disabilities, to nature and conservation, and I'm super thrilled about its potential in the future. Can't wait till the next movement comes out of this, that will then actually start to engage in opportunity for people around the world to adopt their own solutions.
I got to tell you a quick story. When I grew up, my Uncle Tom, who's still alive today, he lived in East Vancouver. So we'd go to his house as a young boy, up the stairs to the left in the living room, and he went to Hawaii marlin fishing and caught a marlin, and he had it stuffed and mounted above his fireplace. The blade on the thing was about that long. Beautiful colored fish. And my dad was a fly fisherman, right? So it was like salmon. And then I started out with just get a little card topper going up to Cultus Lake and doing trout fishing. And I've always loved the water. But this thing about conservation and mental health and being close to nature, I mean, it gives me a reason for wanting to be back on the water.
We're becoming such an urban-based society, and more disconnects with nature. And I think we really need to try to help stimulate more connection. It's incredible how healing it is. Serotonin levels come down. We start to have our systems be better regulated, and then we have deep social bonds, and then become passionate about the connectedness of everything.
That's very cool. You said you had one of your daughters. How many kids do you have?
I have 3 daughters, and we have 4 grandsons, and life is great.
See that smile, Mitch? And we got to make sure you get that to show that to your daughters. I have a daughter who's just married, 28, back in New Brunswick. Yeah, and she's moving back home. So
whereabouts in New Brunswick?
Just out of Sackville. It's the Mount Allison University. Beautiful town.
My wife and I were engaged in Shediac.
Oh, we drove right through that.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
Actually, this year when I went back, it was the first time to Nova Scotia. Yeah. And you talk about water, it's a beautiful country, right? But she's coming back home, so I'm happy.
It's always nice when they come home.
I know. Let's take a turn into the macro, which is the global vision. And this is really the influences of context on what you've done, right from, I guess, when you're a young man to now. And we'll call this barriers beyond physical. So you talked about both physical barriers and attitude barriers, a lot about that. In your global work, which has been harder to change and why? Have you found certain approaches that consistently break through people's resistance?
I think it's the toughest thing on the issue of accessibility and or dealing with people with disabilities is that it's so fragmented as a community, by disease or body part or continuum of from acute care into research, into rehabilitation, into community, and then from community into a variety of other areas. And then of course you have the visible and the not so visible. And so people tend to work in symbols of association. And I believe that one of the biggest challenges is people don't realize the power and the magnitude of disability and how significant it is. They also seem to be caught, in the notion of charity and human rights, which are both very important, but they really have a blind spot to the economic and cultural value proposition. And in other words, how critical it is to break through from the unsustainable economic burden of having barriers in society for people with disabilities. The costs of transforming are minimal compared to that burden, but they're dwarfed by the economic and cultural payoff. And I mean cultural payoff because people with disabilities are some of the most resilient, creative, and adaptive people that I know. And they are used to being put in a situation where things are disrupted, challenging, and finding solutions. And what's going on in the world today? And don't we need that kind of cohort to infuse our society? And the fitness of our aging boomers in their mind and in their ability to contribute are critical to our sustainability in our future. Yeah. So that is one of the greatest barriers. And so for me, it's to be able to complete that narrative and to give people a better view of why this is important, and then create converging solutions to the barriers that people with disabilities who are fragmented can see themselves in, which is like why we want to focus on the built environment. These are the things that humans create. And why should we be in any way creating things that shut out 1/3 of our population? Exactly. So it doesn't make any sense.
It's funny, you when you're talking to, I went on a journey that the indigenous peoples, we don't go to them enough and ask them. We don't get them involved in the conversation, and yet they understand the earth, they understand the ground we stand on. And it makes so much sense to me, Rick, what you just said about the brain trust, people with disabilities, the brain trust, and what they can do to change the future. It's when I had the vision change with the concussion, I had to learn very quickly to experience the world through different senses. And when I first started having the light sensitivity, the doc said, close your eyes. So going for a walk in the trails around Port Moody, there's actually a period where I used to go for a walk, make sure nobody's there, and close my eyes. And I started experiencing things in the world totally different. And then one of the things I discovered is the trails around the Port Moody aren't made for people who close their eyes or experiencing this. And so that gives you thought, right? It gives you thought to change the world in some way. It's pretty cool. Let's talk about technology and accessibility for a minute. From exoskeletons to smart environments, what innovation most excites you for creating a more accessible world? And do you see technology solving problems we haven't been able to solve through design alone? And I mean, we're sitting on the boat today. There's an example.
It's unbelievable where technology is today. And I just believe that the impact that it's had on people with disabilities is just at a quantum level. People have a chance to interface with technology to communicate. As a matter of fact, the innovations for people with disabilities have changed the whole world. Like, where does the base technology for Siri come from? And that's from the ability to translate voice into text for those who are limited and can't use their hands. Yeah. Or, audible books, something for the blind, that was. And what about the ability to think about an electric toothbrush or the knob on a door that's changed to a lever on a door, which even your dogs love because they can escape. And so this whole notion of technology and the enabling capacity, and now we're moving to an AI driven world where, you know, the ability to kind of move into a virtual simulation where people can have a 3D experience. They may never get a chance to summit Everest or, you know, scuba dive to the deep parts of the ocean or go onto a rugged nature trail that may never ever be fully accessible, but they can experience it. And it can be part of their rehabilitation to see possibilities. It can be, if they're shut out or economically challenged, to be part of that. And then, of course, it's now being delivered into, you know, very interesting frontiers, the biotech solutions, the modulation of nerves, you know, in the area of the central nervous system, whether it be for, you know, helping to deal with, you know, an epileptic stroke, you know, or occurrence, or having a spinal injury and having a modulator right on the cusp of you know, your epidural space, and you're seeing stimulation, which kind of creates arm movement or leg movement or bowel or bladder function. And these are the golden eras of technology and interface and opportunity. Even what Elon Musk is doing right now with Neuralink and others. I mean, to think about what that represents, and like all new innovations, they have their challenges and dark side, but the opportunity, there's clinical trials going on right now with quadriplegics who really have their whole lives to be potentially enhanced if it works.
I mean, it must be exciting if you juxtapose where you were back when the injury happened and today, and I mean, back then, right? I remember the house I grew up in, no microwaves, you know, Betamax, no streaming, no internet. I mean, you look at the difference today. I think you're right. I think the future for people who have accessibility issues is going to be unlimited.
Because what it does is it brings up ability. And, you know, that old industrial model where, you know, you had to, you know, go out and, you know, fall a tree and build something, you know, with, you know, fully able-bodied. Now you can work on a call center, you can be a programmer, or you can be driving through ChatGPT-5, a whole new solution. And it's really about your creativity and your sense of what's possible. And strengths are being delivered in ways that are unbelievable. So why would we not see that as nothing short of exciting and inspiring?
You just got to sit in front of Rick like I am, everybody. If you had a chance, I mean, you are such an inspiring guy, but you're just talking about these, when you're talking about this topic, your body language, the inflection, what I see, you just light up. And there's been a lot of people that I know have heard you speak publicly and haven't had this intimate time. But I'm just blown away at this stage of your journey, just how much life you've got in you, Rick. That's pretty cool.
I still believe
it's pretty cool.
Got some best work in front, you know, at Tom, and it's like, life is a gift. And
life is a gift.
And it's what you see in front of you as you live every day with purpose, and that inspiration keeps me going, and I see nothing but possibilities, and I'm grateful.
I love that. I'm grateful for you. Let's talk about the book Unwritten. This is a special segment I've been doing for the last 6 months. The answers are mind-blowing. So if there was a book still waiting to be written, one that captures the vision you're still working towards, what would its title be, or maybe what would part of that story be? And then what's the next frontier that's calling you? I think you've told us a bit about that already.
Be moving from disability to ability and being normal. And so that book is still to be unwritten, and it has to be written, because if we don't write that in the narratives of the billions of people living their lives, and what we discover inside of that is that it's the only club that everyone eventually becomes part of. There's no escaping it. And at the end of the day, if we can normalize that reality, and then we don't see any divide between us and them, and all we see is human beings who are whole. And then we try to find barriers and do what's human, as we try to actually help people live a good life and be connected and express love and passion and commitment and innovation as a result, and go on a journey. And that book's got to be written, because if not, we drop into these artificial perspectives and stigmas, and then we create divide. And the world needs unification. And what's the greatest unifier on the planet that knows no boundary? And that's people who happen to have a disability, who are striving for ability.
Well, if there's something I know that the book's going to be written, you're going to write that book. We're going to hold you accountable to write
Wow,
that book.
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I read a book about a woman whose daughter had cancer, and she narrated in the book experience with her until she perished. What was really funny is when you read that book, the daughter's going like, "Mom, I'm okay. Mom, I'm good." Like the daughter's behavior was like she didn't have cancer.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is because if you believe,
Yeah.
I mean, with you, the way you have to navigate the world, I guess if you believe that I can be as normal as anything,
Right.
you know, your mind just follows, right?
It does, yeah, and it takes effort because you're pushing against forces that come at you from others with their stereotypes and their stigmas and their bias, or society that's still not, fully enabling, and so you have to constantly be vigilant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As Rick, you were telling me that last story, I was thinking about a couple things, and one of them is that there's two types of people: a guy like Rick Hansen who has the injury and then decides to go wheel around the world and change the world. And then you meet many people, and Mike Harcourt, I read his book, Plan B, and he even said this, that in GF Strong, he met young people who were about to jump off the cliff, and they wither away and they die, and they just don't have that. And then others who want to change the world. Well, what do you think the difference is between those two people?
Some people would just make it so simple and say, oh, it's just nature. There's some people who just have it and those that don't. But I believe maybe that's true in some circumstances, but I also believe that there's a space in between, and ultimately it's an ability to make a choice. So one thing that we have to give up. We can't actually control what's happened to us, from whatever fate or decisions or of ourselves or others. But what we can do is we can actually choose what we see, and we can choose to hold on to the dark side of the pain and the suffering and the limitation. Yeah. Or we can actually start to expand our view over here and still see the love, the beauty, the meaning and purpose, and the opportunity and ability inside of that pain and suffering, and not to ignore and be delusional about the fact that it's real, but hold space for it. And those that have held space for it and then shifted their focus to more dominantly be over here, the scale has then tipped in their favor, and they move forward with incredible potential and potency. And I've seen it time and time again, and there's no playbook for it, though. It doesn't happen in one bolt of lightning, and people come at it in various phases and ways. But when they do make that transition, it's unbelievable. And yet, when they don't, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. You can understand why, and who are we to say, what's right or wrong? Yeah. But all I know is that those that don't make that change dive into something deep and very painful and difficult, and it's hard to witness, even though it makes you feel helpless. Yeah. And all of us try to help, but at the end of the day, we all have to choose.
Yeah, for sure. What's a little known fact about Rick that you think people don't know, but they might want to know?
Well, hopefully they know that I'm a proud husband of my incredible wife Amanda, who has been, in my view, the most fundamentally important thing that's ever happened in my life. That day that I crashed and dislocated my left shoulder, and I wheeled with one arm, a busted up nose, and a tooth through my top lip, and went into the physio room and was introduced to Amanda. I could not believe that she changed me.
Oh, so that's awesome. See, there's a story I didn't know. So she was in
GF Strong when I was brought back there after I crashed and dislocated my left shoulder, test driving a new racing chair. And doctors were telling me my career was over. Yeah. The dreams of being at the Olympic and Paralympic Games, and the tour idea was delusional. And she just said, I can't promise anything, but I can tell you that, we'll just give it our best, eh? And we'll see how far we can go. And she treated my shoulder. I came back and was on top of the world again, and the dream of wheeling around the world became reignited. And more importantly, she treated my heart, and we fell in love. And the journey that I've had with her as a partner someone who I respect immensely, and then of course having the privilege to start our family and our 3 girls, Emma, Alana, and Rebecca, and then our 4 grandsons. It's been the joy of my life, and it puts everything in perspective. The rest of it is like kind of cool, whatever. I feel privileged to be there, but I also, being part of a family, and whatever you define it to be, I just can't believe how grateful I am.
Thank you for sharing that. I can see the emotion in you. You triggered that in me because, while I can't compare my story to yours, Rick, when I had my injury for 5-6 years, I have somebody in my life that they see you become a shell of a person, and they stay with you, and it becomes your strength. And so I honor you. How many years have you guys been married?
38 years this year.
Oh my God! I thought I was going to tell you we're going 30 next year. You're on us. That's amazing.
Never take a year for granted. And, it's all very, very privileged. And,
well, I have. So we're moving to wrap up, but I have an idea to honor Amanda, and I'll do that in just a minute. We'll weave this in. But thanks for sharing that. Can't wait to meet her one day. I was telling you I'm doing my doctoral degree, and there's a book here that my professor in London said to read. It's called Meetings with Remarkable Men, All and Everything by Gurdjieff. And so in here, the very first person he puts on the list is meeting his father. And he was somebody who was in search for remarkable men. He's trying to figure out who he is. And there was another book that was written by somebody else who took his writings and then turned it into something we can apply in the world. And if I was to write a book, this again, you'd be in this book on the list. Remarkable Men, which you are. So on that note, I want to honor you. So what we do at the show here is at the end, we give you an award. Did you know you're getting an award too?
No.
The guy has probably everything.
Wow, that's so cool. Thanks.
There's a cooler here.
Tell me about the award first.
Yeah, there was a cooler in the corner here that we moved. A beer would be good about right now. Let me just get this thing. Rick, have you heard of challenge coins?
Yes.
I bet you have. And you probably have.
I have a few.
Seen a few or have a few?
Few, yes.
Well, you're getting another one.
I owe people a lot of drinks.
Yeah, okay. So this is pretty cool because nobody's ever really known what these things are. But for the audience, these were, you'll like this, Mitch, being from the service. Challenge coins surfaced during World War I era. The practice of carrying a coin designed specifically for our unit was popular with the Army Special Forces. Carrying the coin at all times, presenting it when challenged to prove affiliation, and they had fun with it. If you didn't have your coin, you had to buy drinks, and you told us about that. I just want to read something I wrote down here that I think, to me, the coin honors the journey where personal challenge transforms into service for others. And in studying this quiet revelation I talked about, the wheels on water today, this whole thing we've done with you, the personal experiences, the universal possibilities, your mindset, your vulnerability, your love for your wife, your love for us, my love for you, all of this is part of what makes you a quiet warrior. So from that hospital bed at age 15 to the worldwide impact, it's exactly what this coin represents, Rick. So when I started the show long ago, I wanted an award for the 1% of people who take something, turn it into something to change the world. The front of the coin, Mitch, you still got me on camera? The front of the coin is the show emblem. They're pretty hefty, handcrafted. And the back of it is the narrative for the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell.
Oh, wow.
Which is that journey you take when you've experienced some pain in your life.
Yeah.
You go seeking the dark side, they call it, and find light side, change the world. So congratulations and welcome to the Quiet Warrior community.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, man.
You're welcome. That was, I think they're calling us.
It's so appropriate, that we'd conclude on something like this that links to, origins in the military and service. And, if it wasn't for veterans and the serve that they created to be able to actually help create a free and democratic society, people like me, people that have had disabilities, would be cast aside, and I can't imagine the life that might not have been. And then they came back from service with many disabling conditions, whether visible or not so visible, and they had to fight again against a society that had these intrinsic barriers. And they paved a way for me and for millions of others, in social justice, human rights, legislation, the birth of Paralympic sport. I mean, like all these things. And now, working like in partnership with veterans to keep moving forward. And so that challenge coin is very appropriate and meaningful to me. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. So I have an envelope here. It's nicely sealed, and the challenge coin is in there. But I said to you I wanted to do something special for the other quiet warrior we heard about today, Amanda, your beautiful wife. And so I'd like you to have this second coin, and as a commemorative
Really appreciate that.
part of the story.
Well, she deserves it more than anyone.
I wish I could give it to her personally, but if you could pass it on to her
thank
for
you.
me.
I really will.
So
Appreciate
congratulations.
that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we'll talk to you anytime.
Look forward to it.
So everybody, find that true passion and purpose like you've heard here from Rick Hansen, and live life, but live the life that you deserve and desire. We'll see you all next week on the Quiet Warrior Show. Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. On the side, both sides we have a door, so the door will open. So wherever we come up at a dock, we can actually be able to just wheel straight across it. Yeah, so it's on that side and on this side. And we also have a davit arm here. If we ever had a dock that was super high, we can actually, drop that out here, and then we can literally hook onto a wheelchair, and with some simple carabiner hooks and chains, and people can lift up and over and then down onto the dock if we had to. Yeah. It also doubles up as an opportunity for a sturgeon sling. So if you bring fish to the water line in that blue sling out there, and it drops it down, and then slides it holds it in water, so we can measure and tag and then release it safely and with no real problem.
That is sweet.
And like I mentioned earlier, if you can imagine, whether it's a boat, whether it's a train, a plane, or an automobile, or a condominium, or any kind of built environment, you can build things that have a maximum adaptability, and they're built with universal and inclusive design principles in mind. And the key is to move upstream to the manufacturers and the developers, because that's where it all happens. And if they have competency and they actually work with people who have expertise in accessibility, the synergy takes place. And we had a boat builder from Langford in Victoria and Northwest Aluminum, and he'd never built a boat, for someone with a disability, but he worked with our team, and they synergized this platform, and you can see that it's literally one core platform right up to the helm. So you can literally.
Did they build this thing from the ground up, or did they refurbish something?
Yeah, well, the hull is a frame, but everything else was then built that way. Normally, you would step from here. You would step either up or down, and you would already create a barrier. They would also normally have this, like the doorway about like this.
Yeah.
And so their structural frame would put an artificial structure that you'd have to try to overcome. And sometimes those were load-bearing structures that were not movable. There's no barrier here. You just wheel straight in. And when you come in here, because we don't have fixed seating, we can actually bring in like 5, 6, 7, 8 chairs.
Yeah.
Or if you have 4 people, in wheelchairs, you have tie downs and areas where they can be situated, and you can adapt easily. And in here, if you have a hearing challenge, we're set up, with a comms loop, so for hearing aids, but also we have earphones and microphones. So when we're actually cruising with noise, people can have a nice, comfortable conversation. If you're a leader and you want to make a presentation, we've got a screen here, monitor, where you can literally communicate and present your message. Nice. And have that ability. But if you're the captain,
is this a coffee machine here?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and got to have that. But if you're the captain, and you want to, basically make that happen, well, then you just simply come here and push the button, but they don't have the power on. That's okay. Anyway, so you push the button and up you go, and now you're you're actually driving. Or if you're the co-captain,
That's cool.
yeah, or here, this is an example of like a confined space. This is all kind of covered because they've just come back from a big journey up the Central Coast. So there's usually that's all cleared off, but down at the bottom is another lift. So you just push the button.
Oh, wow.
You just literally push the button here, and the lift comes up, and you wheel straight on, and then go down, and then there's a turning radius, and it's accessible in there.
That's
and
remarkable.
so you can.
Yeah.
So people often think that small spaces means inaccessible, not accessible, but small spaces can be built accessible if you're creative and you think about it. And so all three sections are inclusive and adaptable, and it's an example of what can be done if you're building a condo. Why would you just have just a couple of units accessible when you could have every unit adaptable?
Yeah.
And then depending on the circumstance, you can adapt that unit very simply with very little investment, and just like anyone would. And then when you're finished, it could be reestablished for the needs of the next customer and owner, and it's super easy.
I can see what you were saying before, like the principles, the concepts to do something like this. This is almost like a prototype that you could take out and just show, okay, it's a boat, but for, condo living or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? You use your creativity. Who drives this?
Yeah. So we have a captain.
Yeah.
And he's, we have 150 days a year where he's out taking, an average of anywhere from 4 to, to 6, guests, sometimes 8 or 10.
Yeah.
And so, he's totally been, his name is Tony Nudabas. He's been on the water for 30 years.
Nice.
And he has an adventure tourism and sport fishing company, but he wants to make a difference. And so he's here with us. And
how many horsepower?
Sorry?
Do you know how many horsepower? Or how many knots?
Everyone looks at that and says, "Oh, this is really like underpowered for a boat like this." But that's the kicker.
Okay.
And in here, under here is 440 horse, Volvo engine, and it's a very efficient engine, and you're very reliable as well.
Last thing, because I know Don's going to get you out of here. Can you just tell him that story again about the gyro? What that was?
Yeah. So underneath here is a gyroscopic centrifuge called a Seakeeper. It's on the bottom of the hull
Under here,
and it's about 500 pounds, and it spins 8,000 times per minute, like a top. And once it is spinning, it creates its own, counter force to any tipping motion. And so when you're in waves, a lot of people, whether you're in a chair or you have mobility or stability challenges, it's the side to side movement that can create either seasickness or, instability or nervousness. And so that Seakeeper helps create a level of comfort and safety that's really important.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it doesn't take away the ups and downs, front to back, but you're not going side to side, and that's the complex side that really makes it difficult. So,
very cool.
Yeah, and then if you happen to be a person who likes to fish, or if you wanted to become a tagger that catches, tags, and releases a salmon or a sturgeon, and you have a quadriplegic who can't move his hands. Well, most people would say, how could you go fishing? Well, if they can power their power chair or work with their computer technology, they can actually work with a electric reel and then have a sip and puff technology where you sip and it activates the reel, and it actually starts coming in, and you can hook the fish and bring it in and fight the fish like anyone else and be part of the journey. And that's
See, I'd love to
incredible.
do. I just want to do that, just the way you described it.
Yeah, it's
pretty cool.
It's so fun.
That's amazing.
Right? And and if someone has maybe a little bit of balance challenges, we're also building a special chair a seat that you can sit in that has 4 casters, and then you just sort of slide down the rod holder, and it takes all the weight of the rod, and you can just go like this, and then the guide can come in behind you and take the brakes off, like a shopping cart or a baggage cart, and you can slide you wherever you want to, so you can keep reeling.
No kidding.
But you don't have to
Yeah.
fight the heaviness of the rod or a fish, and
That's very cool.
and give someone a chance to be fully included.
Yeah, that's remarkable. Well, thanks very much, Rick.
you.
This is a bonus, so appreciate it. So we'll be back on the boat with you for sure.
Looking forward to it.
Mitch, last word from you to Rick. And
No, this has been an incredible experience.
Hey, thanks, Mitch.
Yeah.
Appreciate
All right.
it.
Thank you for
Okay.
having us on.
Okay.
Honor.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca